Hey guys, tonight, we're setting out across one of the oldest, most mysterious highways in history. We're going to experience what it was truly like to be a merchant on the Silk Road, feeling the dust beneath our feet, the weight of precious cargo on our backs, and the endless rhythm of camel bells echoing across ancient desert paths. If you enjoy this kind of slow, immersive historical content, I'd really appreciate a gentle like and subscribe. It helps the channel reach other people who might need this kind of peaceful escape from the modern world. And if you're listening to this right now, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Drop a comment and let's see how far across the world this journey takes us. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's drift back in time to the year 250 CE. Somewhere along the dusty trade routes that connected the Roman Empire to the mysterious lands of silk and spice. You feel the steady sway of your camel beneath you, the familiar rhythm that has become as natural as breathing over these past 7 days. The sun hangs low in the western sky, painting the endless expanse of the Taklamakan Desert in shades of amber and gold. Your caravan of 37 camels and 22 men stretches out both ahead and behind you, a living serpent of commerce threading its way through this sea of sand. The leather reins rest loosely in your weathered hands, your palms permanently stained with the dust of a dozen kingdoms. Your camel, a patient creature named Bahar, knows the way as well as you do. She has carried you and your precious cargo of Chinese silk and Roman glassware across these routes for 3 seasons now, her broad feet finding purchase on sand that would swallow a horse's hooves. Behind you, secured in heavy wool sacks and wooden crates, lies your fortune. Bolts of silk so fine they seem to capture light itself, their colors deeper than any dye your homeland has ever known. There are 27 pieces in total, each one wrapped in oiled leather to protect against the desert's harsh embrace. Beside them, carefully cushioned in sheepskin, rest 12 vessels of blown glass from Alexandria, their surfaces catching the late afternoon light like captured stars. The man riding beside you, Hassan, adjusts his turban against the wind that has begun to pick up from the north. He has been your companion on this route for 2 years now, a Persian trader whose knowledge of languages has saved your caravan more times than you can count. His camel carries bags of lapis lazuli from the mines of Badakhshan, stones so blue they seem to hold pieces of the sky within them. You can taste the approaching evening in the air, that subtle shift in temperature that tells you the day's heat is beginning to break. The sand beneath your caravan has been shifting color gradually, from the pale yellow of midday to the deeper gold that promises sunset. Soon, you know, the desert will transform into something entirely different, a world of silver and shadow beneath the stars. The caravan master, Darius, rides at the front of your group, his figure barely visible through the heat shimmer that still rises from the dunes. He is a man of few words but infinite patience, someone who has learned to read the desert's moods like a scholar reads scrolls. His decisions about when to rest, when to push forward, when to seek shelter, have kept your group alive through sandstorms and scorching heat. As the sun continues its descent, you feel the familiar tightness in your back from hours in the saddle. Your legs, pressed against Bahar's warm flanks, have grown accustomed to this position, though you know that when you finally dismount for the evening, the first few steps will be awkward, your body remembering what it feels like to support its own weight. The sound of the caravan is a constant companion now. The soft pad of camel feet in sand, the gentle tinkling of bells attached to the lead animals, the occasional snort or grunt from the beasts of burden, the quiet murmur of conversation between the men. These sounds have become the soundtrack of your days, more familiar than the bustle of any marketplace. You reach for your waterskin, feeling its weight against your hip. The leather is soft from use, shaped by countless hands and countless journeys. The water inside is warm, almost hot, but it satisfies your thirst in a way that the coolest well water never could. Each sip is precious out here, measured not just in quantity but in the distance to the next oasis. As you drink, you notice that the wind has shifted slightly, carrying with it the scent of something different. Not the clean, empty smell of pure desert, but something more complex. Hassan notices it too, lifting his head like an animal testing the air. After a moment, he turns to you with a smile creasing his sun-darkened face. "Water," he says simply, though he speaks the word in 3 languages, as if to convince the desert itself that your group deserves this blessing. The knowledge that water lies ahead changes everything about the caravan's mood. The camels seem to sense it too, their pace quickening almost imperceptibly. The men begin to sit straighter in their saddles, scanning the horizon with renewed interest. Even the bells seem to ring with a different tone, more musical, more hopeful. You have been traveling for 8 days since leaving the last major oasis, 8 days of rationed water and careful conservation. The thought of unlimited water, of being able to wash the dust from your face and hands, of filling your water skins until they bulge with liquid wealth, fills you with a quiet satisfaction that you've learned to savor. The desert around you begins to show subtle signs of the approaching oasis. The sand grows slightly firmer beneath the camel's feet. Occasional tufts of hardy grass appear, their green so vivid against the brown and gold landscape that they seem almost unreal. A few scattered rocks begin to dot the terrain, each one a small monument to the underground water that flows beneath this seemingly lifeless expanse. As the sun touches the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and purple, you catch your first glimpse of the oasis ahead. It appears like a mirage at first, a dark smudge on the horizon that could be a trick of the light. But as your caravan continues forward, the smudge resolves into the unmistakable silhouette of palm trees, their fronds moving gently in the evening breeze. The sight of those trees fills you with an emotion that you struggle to name. It is not quite relief, not quite joy, but something deeper and more complex. It is the feeling of a promise kept, of the desert's harsh bargain fulfilled. You have endured the heat, the thirst, the endless sameness of sand and sky, and now you are being rewarded with life itself. The oasis grows larger as you approach, revealing itself gradually like a flower opening its petals. You can see the dark mirror of water reflecting the evening sky, surrounded by a ring of date palms and smaller vegetation. Smoke rises from what must be cooking fires, and you can make out the shapes of other travelers who have reached this sanctuary before you. Darius raises his hand, and the caravan comes to a gradual halt at the oasis's edge. The sudden stillness feels strange after so many hours of constant motion. You hear the camels breathing, deep and patient, and the settling sounds of leather and wood as the animals adjust to their new position. The process of making camp begins immediately, with the practiced efficiency of men who have done this countless times before. You slide down from Bahar's back, feeling the shock of solid ground beneath your feet. Your legs are stiff, your back aching, but there is work to be done before you can rest. First, the camels must be tended. You hobble Bahar's front legs with leather straps, ensuring she cannot wander far but can still move enough to graze on the sparse vegetation. You remove her saddle and the heavy packs that contain your precious cargo, stacking them carefully in the spot that will become your sleeping area for the night. The other merchants are going through the same ritual, each man responsible for his own animals and goods. The oasis fills with the sounds of unpacking, the soft conversation of men who are tired but not yet ready to rest. Someone has already started a fire, and the smoke carries the promise of hot food and sweet tea. You walk to the water's edge, kneeling beside the small pool that has sustained travelers for centuries. The water is clear and cool, tasting of earth and stone and the deep places where it has hidden from the sun. You cup it in your hands, drinking deeply, then splash it over your face and neck, feeling the accumulated dust of 8 days wash away. The sensation is almost overwhelming. The water is so cold against your sun-heated skin that it makes you gasp. You can feel it running down your chest, carrying away the salt and grime of the journey. For a moment, you simply kneel there, letting the water drip from your beard, savoring this simple pleasure that the desert has taught you to appreciate. Other members of your caravan are doing the same, some washing themselves, others refilling water skins or tending to their animals. The atmosphere is peaceful, almost sacred. Even the camels seem to sense the importance of this place, drinking deeply but calmly, their usual complaints and grumbles replaced by contented silence. As full darkness approaches, the camp begins to take shape. Sleeping rolls are unrolled in a rough circle around the fire, which has grown larger and more welcoming. Someone has produced a pot and is preparing the evening meal, the smell of onions and spices beginning to mingle with the smoke. You settle onto your sleeping roll, feeling the familiar comfort of the thick felt that has been your bed for so many nights. Around you, the other merchants are engaged in quiet conversation, sharing news from their various journeys, discussing the road ahead, comparing the quality of their goods. Hassan sits beside you, producing a small leather bag from his belongings. Inside are chunks of hard cheese, preserved meat, and dried fruits that he shares generously. The food is simple but deeply satisfying after the day's journey. Each bite seems to restore not just your body but your spirit as well. The meal, when it comes, is a feast by desert standards. Lentils and rice cooked with precious spices, flatbread baked on hot stones, and sweet tea that tastes of mint and distant gardens. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing that tomorrow will bring another day of dried rations and carefully measured water. As the night deepens, the desert reveals its other face. The temperature drops steadily, and you pull your woolen cloak tighter around your shoulders. The stars emerge one by one, then suddenly all at once, until the sky is a tapestry of light more brilliant than any earthly treasure. You lie back on your sleeping roll, looking up at the vast expanse of stars. Out here, far from any city or settlement, the night sky is a living thing, pulsing with light and mystery. You can see the pale ribbon of the Milky Way stretching across the heavens, and you find yourself thinking about the journey ahead, the cities and kingdoms that await beyond the horizon. The sounds of the oasis settle around you like a lullaby. The gentle movement of palm fronds in the night breeze, the occasional bubble of water from the spring, the soft breathing of sleeping camels, and the gradual quieting of human voices as exhaustion claims each traveler in turn. You close your eyes, feeling the solid earth beneath your body, the warmth of the dying fire on your face, the cool night air filling your lungs. Tomorrow will bring another day of travel, another step on the long journey toward the markets of Samarkand, but for now, you are exactly where you need to be. Sleep comes easily in the desert, deep and dreamless, the kind of rest that only comes from physical exhaustion and the security of being exactly where you belong in the world. You wake to the sound of movement in the pre-dawn darkness, your body automatically responding to the rhythms of caravan life. The stars are still visible overhead, but the eastern horizon shows the faintest hint of pale light. Around you, the other merchants are stirring, their movements careful and quiet in the darkness. The fire has burned down to glowing coals, but someone has already begun to rebuild it, adding dried grass and small sticks until flames begin to dance once again. The smell of brewing tea fills the air, that bitter, comforting aroma that has become the scent of morning for you. You roll up your sleeping gear, your hands working automatically in the darkness. The felt is damp with dew, something that would have surprised you before you learned the desert's ways. Even in this land of eternal dryness, the night brings its own small gifts of moisture. Bahar stands patiently nearby, her large eyes reflecting the firelight. She allows you to approach and begin the process of loading her for another day's journey. The saddle, heavy with use and shaped by countless miles, settles into its familiar position on her back. The precious cargo follows, each piece checked and secured with the care of someone whose life depends on these goods reaching their destination. The ritual of morning preparation is comforting in its predictability. Check the animals, secure the loads, eat what food is available, fill the water skins one last time. Around you, the other merchants are going through the same motions, each man responsible for his own small piece of this larger enterprise. The tea, when it comes, is hot and strong, sweetened with precious sugar that makes each sip a small luxury. You drink it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through your body, chasing away the chill of the desert night. The cook has prepared a simple breakfast of flatbread and dried dates, food that will sustain you through the morning's travel. As the eastern sky begins to lighten, Darius moves among the group, checking on each man and his animals. His inspection is thorough but quick, the practiced eye of someone who has learned that small problems in the desert can quickly become matters of life and death. The oasis around you begins to reveal itself in the growing light. The pool of water that seemed so large and welcoming in the evening now shows its true size, perhaps 20 paces across at its widest point. But it is deep and clear, fed by an underground spring that has flowed here since before human memory. Other travelers are camped nearby, men from different caravans following different routes. There is a group of Chinese merchants heading west with loads of silk and porcelain, their animals and equipment subtly different from your own. A small party of Romans travels east, their guards wearing the distinctive armor of the legions, their cargo carefully hidden beneath anonymous brown coverings. The unspoken rules of the oasis govern all interactions here. Water is shared freely, news is exchanged honestly, and disputes are set aside in favor of the common need for sanctuary. The desert enforces its own code of hospitality, harsh in its punishments for those who violate the sacred nature of these refuge points. As the light strengthens, you can see the full extent of the oasis. Beyond the water and the palm trees lies a small settlement, perhaps a dozen mud brick buildings housing the permanent residents who maintain this stopping point. Smoke rises from cooking fires, and you can see women moving between the buildings, beginning their daily tasks. The settlement serves many purposes for the caravans that pass through. Fresh bread can be purchased here, along with fodder for the animals and basic repairs to equipment. More importantly, it serves as a hub for information, a place where news from across the trade routes is collected and shared. You approach one of the buildings, a low structure with thick walls designed to stay cool in the desert heat. Inside, an elderly Persian man sits cross-legged behind a low table, his weathered hands sorting through a collection of small items. He looks up as you enter, his eyes bright with intelligence and curiosity. The conversation that follows is conducted in the mixture of languages that serves as the common tongue of the Silk Road. Persian, Greek, a few words of Chinese, hand gestures, and the universal language of commerce. He has news from the West, stories of Roman armies and political changes that might affect trade. You share what you know of conditions to the east, the state of the roads, the attitudes of local officials. This exchange of information is as valuable as any goods in your cargo. Knowledge of safe routes, friendly cities, and potential dangers can mean the difference between profit and loss, between life and death. The old man's network of contacts spans the known world, and his memory holds the accumulated wisdom of decades of desert travel. You purchase a small quantity of dried meat and some hard cheese that will keep well in the heat. The prices are high, as they always are at oases, but you pay without complaint. The man's family has chosen to live in this harsh place specifically to serve travelers like yourself, and they deserve to profit from their sacrifice. Outside, the sun has fully risen, and the desert is beginning to heat up. The cool of the night is fading quickly, replaced by the relentless warmth that will define the day ahead. Darius has gathered the caravan together, and the familiar process of departure begins. You mount Bahar, settling into the saddle that has become your second home. Around you, the other merchants are doing the same, their movements efficient and practiced. The camels, refreshed by their night at the oasis, seem eager to continue the journey, their heads held high as they face the empty desert ahead. The caravan moves out in single file, each animal following the one ahead in the endless chain that stretches across the dunes. Behind you, the oasis grows smaller, its green sanctuary shrinking to a dark spot on the horizon, then disappearing entirely into the heat haze. The rhythm of travel reasserts itself quickly. The steady sway of the camel, the creak of leather and wood, the soft whisper of feet in sand. The sun climbs higher, and you adjust your head wrap to provide better protection against the growing heat. The landscape ahead is different from what you left behind. The sand here is deeper, softer, requiring more effort from the animals. The dunes are larger, their slopes steeper, their colors ranging from pale gold to deep amber. In the distance, you can see the wavering line of mountains, still days away but promising different terrain and cooler temperatures. The morning passes in comfortable silence, each man lost in his own thoughts. You find yourself thinking about the destination that still lies ahead, the great city of Samarkand with its bustling markets and wealthy merchants. The silk in your cargo will command high prices there, traded for gold and precious stones that will make the return journey equally profitable. But that is still days away, and the desert has taught you to focus on the immediate present. The heat is building, the sun climbing toward its merciless peak. Soon, the caravan will need to stop for the midday rest, seeking what shade can be found in this shadowless land. You reach for your waterskin, taking a careful sip of the precious liquid. The water is already warm, heated by the sun despite the insulation of the leather container. You wet your lips and tongue, fighting the urge to drink more deeply. The discipline of water conservation has become second nature, but it still requires constant attention. The caravan ahead of you begins to slow, and you see Darius signaling for a halt. The midday rest is starting earlier than usual, and you scan the horizon for the reason. There, barely visible in the distance, is a dark line across the sky, a wall of dust that can only mean one thing. A sandstorm is approaching from the east, still hours away but moving steadily in your direction. The decision is made quickly and without discussion. The caravan will seek shelter here, in the lee of a large dune, and wait for the storm to pass. The process of making emergency camp is swift and efficient. The camels are arranged in a protective circle, their bodies providing a windbreak for the men and cargo. Sleeping rolls are unrolled in the center of the circle, and every piece of equipment is checked and secured. You help Hassan cover his precious lapis lazuli with extra layers of cloth, protecting the stones from the abrasive sand that will soon fill the air. Your own silk receives similar treatment, wrapped in oiled leather and positioned to take advantage of the camel's protection. The storm arrives with the sudden violence that characterizes all desert weather. One moment the air is still and clear, the next it is filled with stinging sand that reduces visibility to mere arm's length. The wind howls across the dunes, carrying with it the voice of the desert itself, ancient and implacable. You pull your cloak over your head, breathing through the fabric to filter the worst of the sand from the air. The sound is overwhelming, a constant roar that makes conversation impossible. You can feel the sand penetrating every fold of your clothing, every gap in your protection, coating your skin with its fine, persistent presence. The storm lasts for 3 hours, 3 hours of crouching in the uncertain shelter of the camels' bodies, waiting for the wind to exhaust itself. When it finally passes, it does so as suddenly as it arrived, leaving behind an eerie silence that feels almost unnatural after the prolonged assault of sound. You emerge from your shelter, shaking sand from your cloak and belongings. The landscape around you has changed subtly, the dunes shifted and reshaped by the storm's passage. The caravan will need to check its bearings, make sure that the familiar landmarks are still where they should be. The camels, patient as always, have weathered the storm without complaint. They shake themselves like enormous dogs, sending small clouds of sand into the still air. Their eyes, protected by thick lashes, show no signs of distress, only the calm acceptance that characterizes their kind. The afternoon sun is merciless after the storm, beating down on the freshly disturbed sand with an intensity that seems to have increased during the brief respite. The caravan reorganizes itself, checks its equipment, and prepares to continue the journey. You mount Bahar once again, feeling the familiar comfort of the saddle beneath you. The storm has cost you precious time, but it has also reminded you of the desert's power, its ability to reshape both landscape and plans with equal indifference. The caravan moves forward, following the same route it has taken for generations of travelers. The path is not marked by any sign visible to untrained eyes, but Darius navigates by the sun, the stars, the shape of distant mountains, and the subtle variations in the sand itself. The afternoon heat is brutal, a living thing that seems to press against you from all sides. You can feel it radiating up from the sand beneath, beating down from the sun above, reflecting off every surface until the very air seems to shimmer with its intensity. The camels plod forward steadily, their bodies designed for this environment, their pace never varying despite the harsh conditions. You find yourself entering the meditative state that long desert travel induces, a kind of waking dream where time seems to stretch and compress simultaneously. The rhythm of the camel's gait becomes a metronome for your thoughts, the vast emptiness of the landscape clearing your mind of all but the most essential concerns. Water, the security of your cargo, the health of your animals, the distance to the next stop. These are the thoughts that matter out here, stripped of all complexity and reduced to their fundamental importance. The desert has a way of clarifying what truly matters, of burning away the unnecessary complications of civilized life. The sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, and the quality of light starts to change. The harsh white glare of midday gives way to warmer tones, golds and ambers that make the endless dunes seem less hostile, more like a vast ocean of precious metal. As evening approaches, the caravan begins to look for a suitable place to camp. The ideal spot would offer some protection from the wind, solid ground for the animals, and a clear view of the surrounding terrain. In this featureless landscape, such requirements are not easy to meet. Darius eventually selects a spot in the lee of a large dune, where the sand is slightly firmer and the wind patterns offer some protection. The process of making camp begins immediately, with each man tending to his own responsibilities in the practiced dance of desert travel. You unsaddle Bahar, checking her feet and legs for any signs of injury or strain. The sand can be harsh on the animal's pads, and a lame camel in the middle of the desert is a serious problem. Satisfied that she is in good condition, you hobble her legs and remove the heavy packs that contain your precious cargo. The evening meal is simple but satisfying. Dried meat, hard cheese, and flatbread, washed down with warm tea that tastes of mint and distant gardens. The cook has managed to prepare a pot of lentils, cooked with precious spices that transform the simple ingredients into something approaching luxury. As darkness falls, the desert reveals its other face once again. The temperature drops steadily, and you pull your woolen cloak around your shoulders. The stars emerge in their countless thousands, a carpet of light stretching from horizon to horizon with an intensity that never fails to amaze you. You lie back on your sleeping roll, looking up at the vast expanse of stars. Somewhere up there, according to the learned men of various kingdoms, lie the answers to questions that have puzzled humanity for generations. Out here, far from the noise and distraction of cities, such questions seem both more important and less urgent. The sounds of the desert night settle around you. The gentle movement of the camels, their occasional snorts and sighs, the quiet conversation of the men around the dying fire, the whisper of sand moving in the slight breeze. These sounds have become the soundtrack of your life, more familiar than the bustle of any marketplace. You close your eyes, feeling the solid earth beneath your body, the warmth of the dying fire on your face, the cool night air filling your lungs. Tomorrow will bring another day of travel, another step on the long journey toward the markets of Samarkand, but for now, you are exactly where you need to be. Sleep comes easily in the desert, deep and dreamless, the kind of rest that only comes from physical exhaustion and the security of being exactly where you belong in the world. The third day begins before dawn, with the familiar sounds of the caravan stirring to life. You wake to the soft murmur of voices and the gentle movement of men preparing for another day's journey. The stars are still visible overhead, but the eastern horizon shows the faintest hint of pale light. Your body has adapted to the rhythms of desert travel, waking automatically at the right time, your muscles remembering the sequence of movements required to break camp and prepare for the day ahead. The felt sleeping roll is damp with dew, a small gift of moisture from the cool night air. Bahar stands patiently in the pre-dawn darkness, her large eyes reflecting the dim light of the rekindled fire. She allows you to approach and begin the familiar ritual of loading her for another day's journey. The saddle, heavy with use and shaped by countless miles, settles into its accustomed position on her back. The precious cargo follows, each piece checked and secured with the care of someone whose life depends on these goods reaching their destination. The silk, wrapped in its protective oiled leather, the Roman glassware cushioned in sheepskin, everything positioned to survive another day of the desert's harsh embrace. The morning tea is hot and strong, sweetened with precious sugar that makes each sip a small luxury. You drink it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through your body, chasing away the chill of the desert night. The cook has prepared a simple breakfast of flatbread and dried dates, food that will sustain you through the morning's travel. Around you, the other merchants are going through the same motions, each man responsible for his own small piece of this larger enterprise. The atmosphere is quietly companionable, the shared understanding of men who have chosen to entrust their lives to each other in this unforgiving environment. As the eastern sky begins to lighten, Darius moves among the group, checking on each man and his animals. His inspection is thorough but quick, the practiced eye of someone who has learned that small problems in the desert can quickly become matters of life and death. The landscape around you begins to reveal itself in the growing light. The dunes here are smaller than those you traversed the day before, their slopes gentler, their colors a lighter shade of gold. In the distance, you can see the dark line of mountains growing closer, their peaks touched with the first light of dawn. The caravan moves out as the sun clears the horizon, the familiar rhythm of travel reasserting itself. The steady sway of the camel, the creak of leather and wood, the soft whisper of feet in sand. The temperature is comfortable now, but you know that within hours the heat will begin to build toward its daily crescendo. This morning's journey takes you through terrain that shows subtle signs of change. The sand is firmer here, mixed with gravel and small stones that speak of water somewhere in the not-too-distant past. Occasional tufts of hardy grass appear, their green so vivid against the brown and gold landscape that they seem almost unreal. The caravan ahead of you maintains its steady pace, each animal following the one ahead in the endless chain that stretches across the dunes. You find yourself falling into the meditative state that long desert travel induces, your mind clearing of all but the most essential thoughts. The sun climbs higher, and you adjust your head wrap to provide better protection against the growing heat. The water in your skin is already beginning to warm, but you resist the urge to drink more than absolutely necessary. The discipline of water conservation has become second nature, but it still requires constant attention. Around midday, the landscape begins to change more dramatically. The dunes give way to a harder, more rocky terrain, dotted with larger stones and occasional outcroppings of weathered rock. The mountains ahead are closer now, their details becoming clearer in the shimmering heat. The caravan stops for the midday rest in the shade of a large rock formation, a welcome relief from the merciless sun. The camels are grateful for the respite, settling onto the ground with their characteristic groans and sighs. You dismount, feeling the familiar stiffness in your legs and back. The rock provides blessed shade, but the heat radiating from its surface reminds you that even shelter comes with a price in the desert. You find a spot where the stone is coolest, settling onto your sleeping roll to wait out the worst of the day's heat. Hassan joins you, sharing some of his dried fruit and hard cheese. The food is simple but deeply satisfying, each bite seeming to restore not just your body but your spirit as well. The Persian trader has been unusually quiet today, his eyes frequently scanning the horizon ahead. You follow his gaze and see what has caught his attention. The mountains ahead are closer than they appeared this morning, their peaks now clearly visible against the sky. More importantly, you can see the dark line of vegetation that indicates water, the promise of another oasis in this harsh landscape. The afternoon brings a change in the wind, a subtle shift that carries with it the scent of growing things. The camels sense it too, their heads lifting, their pace quickening almost imperceptibly. The promise of water ahead changes everything about the caravan's mood. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, the landscape continues to change. The rocky terrain gives way to patches of actual soil, dark and rich with the promise of fertility. Small bushes appear, then larger shrubs, then the unmistakable silhouettes of trees. The oasis, when it finally comes into view, is larger than the one you left 2 days ago. A proper settlement has grown up around the water source, with substantial buildings of mud, brick, and stone. Smoke rises from numerous cooking fires, and you can see people moving between the structures, going about their daily business. The sight fills you with a complex mixture of emotions: relief at reaching safety, anticipation of fresh water and hot food, but also a subtle anxiety about returning to the world of human politics and commerce after the pure simplicity of the desert. The caravan approaches the settlement slowly, following the protocols that govern such arrivals. Darius rides ahead to negotiate with the local authorities, arranging for space to camp and water for the animals. The process is formal but friendly, governed by the ancient codes of hospitality that make desert travel possible. You are assigned a spot on the outskirts of the settlement, near enough to benefit from the security of the walls but far enough away to avoid any conflicts with the permanent residents. The process of making camp is familiar now, each man knowing his role in the complex dance of desert travel. Bahar is grateful for the opportunity to rest, settling onto the ground with evident satisfaction. You remove her saddle and the heavy packs, stacking them carefully in the spot that will become your sleeping area for the night. The precious cargo is secure, but you check each piece anyway, ensuring that the journey has not damaged your precious investment. The water here is abundant, flowing from a spring that emerges from the base of the mountains. It is cool and clear, tasting of stone and earth and the deep places where it has hidden from the sun. You drink deeply, then splash it over your face and hands, feeling the accumulated dust of 3 days wash away. The sensation is almost overwhelming after the careful rationing of the desert. The water is so abundant that you can actually waste it, use it for washing and cleaning instead of just drinking. The luxury of unlimited water is something that people in the cities take for granted, but out here it feels like the greatest wealth imaginable. The settlement around the oasis is a microcosm of the Silk Road itself, a place where East meets West in the most literal sense. Chinese merchants camp alongside Roman traders, Persian caravans share space with Indian pilgrims, and the local population includes people from dozens of different kingdoms and cultures. The evening meal is a feast compared to the simple fare of the desert. Fresh bread from the settlement's ovens, meat cooked over open fires, vegetables that have been grown in the oasis's fertile soil. The cook has managed to obtain fresh spices, and the air is filled with aromas that make your mouth water. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing that tomorrow will bring another departure into the desert's harsh embrace. The food is not just nourishment but a celebration, a reminder of what civilization can offer to those who survive the journey between its scattered outposts. As night falls, the settlement comes alive with activity. Merchants gather around cooking fires to share news and stories, their conversations a mixture of languages and dialects that somehow manages to be understood by all. Children from the local families dart between the groups, their laughter a welcome sound after the silent emptiness of the desert. You find yourself drawn into a conversation with a Roman merchant who is traveling east with a cargo of glassware and wine. His Latin is accented with Greek influences, and he speaks Persian with the careful precision of someone who has learned it as a necessity rather than a birthright. But his knowledge of the Western routes is encyclopedic, and you listen carefully to his reports of conditions in the territories you will eventually need to traverse. The information is valuable, but the conversation itself is equally important. After days of silence and isolation, the simple act of talking with someone new, of sharing experiences and perspectives, feeds a hunger that you hadn't realized was growing. As the evening progresses, the settlement gradually quiets. The merchants retire to their camps, the local families return to their homes, and the oasis settles into the peaceful rhythm of night. You lie back on your sleeping roll, looking up at the stars that are slightly dimmed by the cooking fires and oil lamps of the settlement, The sounds of the oasis are different from those of the open desert. The splash of water over stone, the rustle of palm fronds in the breeze, the occasional laughter of children playing in the safety of the settlement's walls. These sounds blend together into a gentle symphony that speaks of human community thriving in the midst of the desert's harsh solitude. Sleep comes differently here than in the open desert, where the vast emptiness of the dunes brings a profound quiet that seems to stretch to the edges of the world. The oasis offers the comfort of human presence, the security of being part of something larger than your small caravan. You drift off to the sound of distant conversation and the gentle splash of water, feeling more rested than you have in days. The fourth morning begins with the sound of the settlement awakening around you. Roosters crow from somewhere within the mud brick walls, and you can hear the voices of women drawing water from the spring, their conversations carrying across the still morning air in languages you don't recognize but somehow understand through their tone and rhythm. You emerge from your sleeping role to find that the world has changed overnight. The air is different here, carrying the scent of growing things and the promise of mountains ahead. The oasis has worked its magic on both men and animals, restoring something that the desert had slowly drained away. Bahar greets you with what might pass for affection in a camel, allowing you to approach without her usual grumbling protests. Her eyes are bright, her coat cleaner from the dust bath she gave herself in the fertile soil around the spring. The abundant water and fodder have restored her strength, and she seems eager to continue the journey. The process of loading her is familiar now, but you take extra care this morning to check every strap and knot. The terrain ahead will be different from the desert sands, requiring different preparations and considerations. The mountains promise cooler temperatures but also steeper paths and the possibility of sudden weather changes. Your precious cargo receives its usual careful attention. The silk, still wrapped in its protective oiled leather, shows no signs of damage from the desert crossing. The Roman glassware, cushioned in its sheepskin cocoon, has survived the journey intact. Each piece represents not just monetary value but the culmination of countless hours of planning, negotiation, and risk. The morning meal is more substantial than what you've grown accustomed to on the road. Fresh bread from the settlement's ovens, still warm and fragrant with the smell of wheat and wood smoke. Soft cheese made from goat's milk, its tangy flavor a welcome change from the hard, preserved varieties that travel well in the desert heat. Sweet tea brewed with mint that grows wild around the spring's edges. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing that the luxury of fresh food will soon be replaced by the familiar routine of dried rations and careful water conservation. The bread is particularly precious, its soft texture and yeasty flavor a reminder of the settled life that most people take for granted. Hassan joins you for the meal, sharing news he gathered from other travelers the night before. A group of Indian merchants passed through 3 days ago, heading west with a cargo of precious stones and exotic spices. They reported good conditions on the mountain passes ahead, but also mentioned increased activity by local officials collecting taxes and tariffs. This information is valuable, part of the constant intelligence gathering that keeps caravan routes viable. The political situation along the Silk Road changes constantly, with local rulers rising and falling, treaties made and broken, and the delicate balance of trade relationships requiring constant attention and adjustment. The other members of your caravan are making similar preparations, each man checking his animals and equipment, gathering information, and preparing for the next phase of the journey. The atmosphere is one of quiet efficiency, the practiced routine of men who have learned to make the most of every opportunity for rest and resupply. Darius appears at your side, his weathered face showing the strain of the constant responsibility he carries for the entire caravan. He speaks quietly, updating you on the route ahead and the timeline for departure. The next major stop is still 5 days away, a journey that will take the caravan through mountain passes and down into the fertile valleys beyond. The settlement around you is bustling with morning activity. Merchants from various caravans are conducting last-minute business, trading goods and information with equal intensity. The local population moves through the temporary encampments, offering services and goods that cater to the needs of desert travelers. You take the opportunity to purchase some additional supplies. A small bag of dried fruit from a local woman whose orchard benefits from the oasis water. Hard cheese that will keep well in the heat to come. A length of rope to replace one that has begun to fray under the constant stress of desert travel. Each purchase is a small negotiation, conducted in the mixture of languages and gestures that serves as the common tongue of the Silk Road. Persian phrases mixed with local dialects, Greek words for concepts that don't translate well, hand signals for numbers and quantities that transcend linguistic barriers. The woman selling fruit is middle-aged, her hands stained with the juice of countless harvests. She examines your silver coins with the practiced eye of someone who has dealt with traders from across the known world. Her approval is wordless but clear, and she adds an extra handful of dates to your purchase with a smile that needs no translation. As the sun climbs higher, the caravan begins the familiar process of preparation for departure. The animals are loaded, the camp broken down, and the loose organization of desert travel reasserts itself. The security and comfort of the oasis is reluctantly abandoned in favor of the journey's continuation. You mount Bahar, settling into the saddle that has become your mobile home over these past days. The familiar weight of the precious cargo is secured behind you, and the waterskins are full to bursting with the clear, cold water of the mountain spring. The luxury of abundant water creates its own burden, but it is a burden you accept gladly. The caravan moves out slowly, following a well-worn path that leads away from the oasis toward the foothills of the mountains. The landscape changes gradually, the flat expanse of the desert giving way to rolling hills covered with hardy vegetation. The air grows cooler as elevation increases, and you can feel the difference in your lungs. The morning's travel takes you through terrain that becomes increasingly varied and interesting. Small streams appear, fed by snowmelt from the distant peaks, their banks lined with green vegetation that seems almost impossibly lush after days in the desert. The path follows these watercourses when possible, providing both navigation reference and the comfort of nearby water. The mountains ahead grow larger and more detailed as the hours pass. What appeared as a distant blue line from the oasis now reveals itself as a complex landscape of peaks and valleys, with snow visible on the highest summits despite the warmth of the season. The sight fills you with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension, knowing that mountain travel brings its own challenges and rewards. The caravan's pace is different here, adapted to the changing terrain. The steady rhythm of desert travel gives way to a more varied cadence as the path winds through hills and valleys. The camels, designed for flat terrain, move more carefully on the uneven ground, their broad feet finding purchase on rocky surfaces with surprising grace. You find yourself paying more attention to the immediate surroundings, the desert's vast monotony replaced by a landscape that changes with every turn of the path. Wildflowers appear in sheltered valleys, their brilliant colors almost shocking after the muted palette of sand and stone. Birds that would never venture into the desert fly overhead, their calls adding new voices to the caravan's soundtrack. The midday halt comes in a grove of ancient trees beside a small stream, their shade providing blessed relief from the sun's intensity. The water here is cold and clear, running over smooth stones with a musical sound that seems to wash away the memory of the desert's silence. You drink deeply, then splash the icy water over your face and hands, gasping at the sudden cold. The contrast with the desert is remarkable. Here, water is abundant enough to be wasted, to be used for comfort rather than just survival. The psychological effect is profound, a sense of abundance and possibility that the desert's harsh rationing had gradually eroded. You find yourself smiling for the first time in days, a response to the simple pleasure of unlimited water. The afternoon brings the first real climbing of the journey. The path winds upward through increasingly steep terrain, the caravan moving in single file along narrow tracks that have been worn smooth by countless generations of travelers. The air grows noticeably cooler as elevation increases, and you pull your cloak closer around your shoulders. The view from the higher elevations is spectacular, offering perspectives that would be impossible in the flat expanse of the desert. You can see the route you've traveled stretching back toward the horizon, a thin line threading through the landscape like a piece of string dropped by some giant hand. The oasis you left this morning is visible as a dark smudge in the distance, already seeming impossibly far away. Ahead, the mountains rise in wave after wave, their peaks catching the afternoon light and throwing it back in shades of gold and purple. The path you're following is clearly marked by the passage of countless caravans, but it disappears into the complex terrain ahead, promising days of challenging travel through some of the most dramatic landscape in the known world. The animals are working harder now, their breathing more labored as the thin air and steep gradients take their toll. You dismount frequently to walk beside Bahar, sharing the burden of the climb and giving her broad feet better purchase on the rocky path. The exercise feels good after days of passive riding, your muscles grateful for the opportunity to work in different ways. The evening camp is made in a natural amphitheater of stone, sheltered from the wind and close to a small stream that provides both water and the pleasant sound of running water. The altitude makes the air noticeably colder, and the fire is built larger than usual, both for warmth and for the psychological comfort it provides in the vast mountain landscape. The meal is prepared with the fresh water from the stream, and the cook has managed to supplement the usual fare with wild greens gathered from the mountainside. The result is a stew that tastes of the mountain itself, earthy and complex in ways that desert food never can be. You eat gratefully, feeling the warmth spread through your body as the sun disappears behind the western peaks. The night comes quickly in the mountains, the sun disappearing behind the towering peaks with startling suddenness. The temperature drops rapidly, and you add layers of clothing that would have been unbearable in the desert heat. The fire becomes the center of the camp's social life, drawing the men together in its circle of warmth and light. The conversation tonight is different from the quiet exchanges of the desert. The change in environment seems to have awakened something in the men, and the talk ranges over topics that rarely surface during the monotonous days of sand and sun. Stories from home, memories of other journeys, speculation about the cities and markets that lie ahead. Hassan produces a small leather pouch from his belongings, revealing a set of carved bone dice that have seen countless games around countless campfires. The game that follows is simple but absorbing, involving small bets and much laughter as fortune shifts from man to man. You participate reluctantly at first, but find yourself drawn into the camaraderie that the game creates. The stars above are different here, partially obscured by the towering peaks that surround the camp. What sky is visible is brilliant with starlight, the thin mountain air providing a clarity that makes each point of light seem close enough to touch. The familiar constellations are framed by the dark silhouettes of the mountains, creating patterns that seem both foreign and comforting. As the night deepens, the conversation gradually dies away, replaced by the comfortable silence of men who have shared danger and hardship together. The fire burns down to glowing coals, and one by one the merchants retire to their sleeping rolls, leaving only the sound of the stream and the occasional rustle of the animals settling for the night. Sleep comes differently in the mountains, the thin air and cold temperatures creating a deeper, more restful slumber than the fitful dozing of the desert. You wrap yourself in your woolen cloak and pull the felt sleeping roll close around your body, feeling the solid stone beneath you and the vast mountain silence pressing in from all sides. The fifth day begins with the sound of ice crystals forming on the edges of your sleeping roll, a reminder that the mountain environment operates by different rules than the desert you've left behind. The air is sharp and clean, carrying the scent of snow and stone and the thin, pure quality that comes with altitude. You emerge from your cocoon of felt and wool to find the world transformed by the mountain dawn. The peaks around you are touched with golden light, their snow-covered summits glowing like beacons against the deep blue sky. The contrast with the harsh, monochromatic landscape of the desert is so dramatic that it takes your breath away. Bahar stands nearby, her breath creating small clouds of vapor in the cold air. Her thick coat is covered with a light frost that melts as you approach, running down her flanks in tiny rivulets. She seems less affected by the cold than you are, her desert-adapted metabolism adjusting to the mountain conditions with the remarkable resilience of her kind. The process of loading her for the day's journey requires different considerations now. The cold makes leather stiff and metal brittle, requiring careful handling to avoid damage to equipment. Your precious cargo needs additional protection against the possibility of moisture, and you check each wrapping and cover with extra care. The morning meal is prepared over a fire built higher than usual, the flames providing both warmth and the means to prepare hot food that will sustain the men through the cold mountain morning. The tea is particularly welcome, its warmth spreading through your body and chasing away the chill that seems to have settled into your bones. The bread, when it comes, is warm from the cooking stones and tastes of smoke and mountain air. You eat it slowly, savoring the contrast between the warm food and the cold air, feeling your body beginning to generate the heat it will need for the day's climb ahead. The route today will take the caravan through the highest pass of the entire journey, a narrow saddle between two towering peaks that represents both the physical and symbolic climax of the mountain crossing. The path is well marked but challenging, requiring careful navigation and constant attention to the animal's welfare. The caravan moves out as the sun clears the eastern peaks, its light streaming down into the valley and bringing with it the promise of warmth to come. The path immediately begins to climb more steeply than before, winding back and forth across the mountainside in a series of switchbacks that make the ascent possible for heavily loaded animals. The view becomes more spectacular with every step upward. The valley you climbed through yesterday spreads out below like a map, its details clearly visible in the thin mountain air. The stream you camped beside appears as a silver thread winding through the green landscape, and you can make out the exact spot where you spent the night. The climbing is hard work, both for the animals and for the men who frequently dismount to walk beside their beasts. The thin air makes every exertion more difficult, and you find yourself breathing hard after efforts that would have been easy at lower elevations. The pace is necessarily slow, with frequent stops to allow both men and animals to rest and recover. Bahar's performance in the mountains is remarkable, her broad feet finding purchase on loose rock and steep slopes with a sure-footedness that seems almost supernatural. Her breathing is labored but steady, and she shows no signs of the distress that mountain travel can cause to animals adapted to flat terrain. The other members of the caravan are experiencing the mountains differently, some adapting quickly to the altitude and terrain while others struggle with the physical demands of the climb. Darius moves among the group constantly, checking on each man and animal, adjusting loads and redistributing weight to help those who are having difficulty. The landscape becomes increasingly dramatic as the caravan climbs higher. The vegetation thins out, replaced by bare rock and patches of snow that persist even in the warmth of the season. The air grows colder and thinner, requiring conscious effort to breathe deeply enough to supply your body with the oxygen it needs. The pass itself appears gradually, a notch in the ridge ahead that seems impossibly narrow and high. The path leading to it is carved directly into the mountainside, a testament to the engineering skills of the ancient peoples who first established this route. The sight of it fills you with a mixture of awe and apprehension, knowing that the next few hours will test both your courage and your endurance. The final approach to the pass is the most challenging part of the entire journey so far. The path is narrow, with steep drops on one side and vertical rock walls on the other. The wind is fierce here, funneled through the gap between the peaks with a force that threatens to unbalance both men and animals. You dismount and lead Bahar by her reins, your feet finding purchase on the rocky path with careful deliberation. The precious cargo on her back sways with each step, and you find yourself constantly adjusting straps and checking fastenings to ensure that nothing is lost to the wind or the treacherous footing. The pass itself, when you finally reach it, is a narrow gap between towering walls of stone, barely wide enough for the caravan to pass through in single file. The wind howls through the opening with a sound like the voice of the mountains themselves, ancient and powerful and utterly indifferent to human concerns. But the view from the pass is worth every moment of the difficult climb. On the far side, The land opens up into a vast valley system, green and fertile and dotted with settlements that appear as tiny specks in the distance. Rivers wind through the landscape like silver ribbons, and you can see the smoke of cooking fires rising from communities too distant to make out clearly. The descent begins immediately, the path winding down the eastern face of the mountains through terrain that is different from anything you've experienced so far. The vegetation here is lusher, fed by moisture from the eastern slopes and protected from the harsh winds that scour the western faces. The air grows warmer and denser as the caravan loses elevation, and you find yourself shedding layers of clothing that were essential just hours before. The change is gradual but noticeable, each switchback in the path bringing you closer to the gentler climate of the valleys below. The afternoon brings the first signs of human habitation since leaving the oasis days ago. Terraced fields appear on the lower slopes, their neat rows of crops speaking of settled agriculture and permanent communities. The sight fills you with a complex mixture of emotions, relief at returning to the human world balanced by a strange nostalgia for the pure simplicity of the wilderness. A small shrine appears beside the path, marking the traditional spot where travelers pause to give thanks for safe passage through the mountains. The structure is ancient, built of local stone and worn smooth by centuries of weather and countless hands. Small offerings left by previous travelers create a colorful display of gratitude and hope. You pause here with the rest of the caravan, adding your own small contribution to the collection of tokens. The gesture is not entirely religious, though there are elements of prayer and superstition involved. It is more a recognition of the mountain's power and the privilege of safe passage through their domain. The valley floor, when you finally reach it, feels like entering a different world. The air is warm and humid, filled with the sense of growing things and the rich earth that supports them. The sound of running water is everywhere, small streams and irrigation channels creating a constant, musical background to the day's activities. The evening camp is made in a grove of fruit trees beside a clear stream, the luxury of abundant water and shelter almost overwhelming after the harsh conditions of the high passes. The animals seem to sense the change in environment, their behavior more relaxed and contented than it has been since leaving the oasis. The meal that night is supplemented with fresh fruit gathered from the trees around the camp, their sweetness a revelation after days of preserved food and careful rationing. The cook manages to prepare a stew using wild vegetables found growing beside the stream, creating a dish that tastes of the valley itself. The conversation around the fire is animated, the successful passage through the mountains having lifted everyone's spirits. Stories are shared, plans are made for the days ahead, and there is a general sense of having accomplished something significant together. The bonds forged by shared hardship are strengthened by shared success. You lie back on your sleeping roll, looking up at the stars that are partially obscured by the canopy of leaves above. The sound of the stream provides a gentle lullaby, and the warm air carries the sense of flowers and growing things. The contrast with the previous night's cold mountain camp is so dramatic that it seems like weeks have passed rather than a single day. Sleep comes easily in the valley, deep and restful in a way that mountain sleep never quite achieves. The abundant oxygen and moderate temperature create ideal conditions for recovery from the day's exertions, and you drift off to the sound of moving water and the gentle rustle of leaves in the night breeze. The sixth day begins with the sound of birds singing in the trees above your camp, their varied songs creating a natural symphony that speaks of the fertility and abundance of the valley environment. The air is soft and warm, carrying the sense of flowers and growing things that make the harsh memories of the desert seem like something from a distant dream. You wake naturally, without the automatic urgency that characterized mornings in the desert or mountains. The valley's gentle climate allows for a more relaxed approach to the day's beginning, and you take time to appreciate the luxury of abundant water and comfortable temperatures. Bahar is grazing contentedly nearby, her usual morning grumpiness replaced by the satisfaction of finding herself in an environment that offers both good food and comfortable conditions. She allows you to approach without protest, and you check her over carefully for any signs of strain or injury from the previous day's mountain crossing. The precious cargo has weathered the journey well, showing no signs of damage from the challenging conditions of the high passes. The silk remains dry and secure in its oiled leather wrappings, and the Roman glassware shows no signs of the stress that mountain travel can inflict on fragile goods. The morning meal is prepared with fresh water from the stream and supplemented with fruit and wild greens that grow abundantly in the valley. The bread, baked on hot stones beside the fire, has a different flavor here, influenced by the wood smoke and the clean air of the mountain valley. The route ahead will take the caravan through increasingly settled country, following ancient paths that connect the scattered communities of the valley system. The landscape is gentler here, with rolling hills and fertile fields that speak of centuries of careful cultivation and human habitation. The morning's travel takes you through a patchwork of agricultural land, with terraced fields climbing the hillsides and orchards filling the valley bottoms. The irrigation systems are ancient and sophisticated, channeling water from mountain streams through carefully constructed channels that distribute moisture to every corner of the cultivated area. The people here are different from those you encountered at the desert oasis, their clothing and customs adapted to the valley's more moderate climate. They watch the caravan's passage with interest but without alarm, clearly accustomed to the regular flow of trade goods and travelers through their territory. Children run alongside the caravan for short distances, their laughter and excitement a welcome change from the solitude of the wilderness travel. They call out greetings in the local dialect, and some of the merchants respond with phrases learned from previous journeys through the region. The path follows the valley floor when possible, winding between fields and orchards in a route that has been established by countless generations of travelers. The footing is good here, and the animals move with the confidence that comes from traveling on well-maintained roads rather than wilderness tracks. The midday halt is made in the shade of a grove of ancient walnut trees, their massive trunks and spreading canopy providing cool shelter from the sun. The stream that runs nearby is clear and cold, fed by snowmelt from the peaks you crossed the day before. The contrast with the warm valley air makes the water particularly refreshing. The afternoon brings the first sight of the destination that has been the goal of your journey for so many days. The city of Samarkand appears in the distance, its walls and towers visible across the valley floor like a mirage made solid. The sight fills you with a complex mixture of emotions, relief at the journey's approaching end balanced by anticipation of the commercial opportunities that await. The city grows larger and more detailed as the caravan continues its approach, revealing itself gradually like a flower opening its petals. The walls are massive, built of local stone and rising high above the surrounding plain. Towers and minarets pierce the sky, and smoke from countless cooking fires creates a haze that speaks of large populations and bustling activity. The final approach to the city is made along a wide, well-maintained road that shows the effects of constant use by merchants and travelers from across the known world. Other caravans can be seen in the distance, some heading toward the city as you are, others departing with their own precious cargoes bound for distant markets. The gates of Samarkand are imposing structures, guarded by soldiers in unfamiliar uniforms but following procedures that are standard throughout the trading world. The caravan halts while Darius negotiates with the customs officials, a process that involves extensive documentation and the payment of various fees and taxes. The wait gives you time to study the city's walls and the activity around the gates. Merchants from a dozen different kingdoms are visible, their varied dress and equipment speaking of the incredible diversity that the Silk Road brings together in places like this. The languages you hear are equally varied, creating a polyglot background of commercial activity. When permission is finally granted, the caravan moves through the gates into the city proper, entering a world that is both familiar and strange. The streets are narrow and crowded, lined with buildings that rise several stories above the ground level. The architecture shows influences from many different cultures, creating a unique style that belongs specifically to this crossroads of civilizations. The smell of the city is overwhelming at first, a complex mixture of spices, cooking food, animals, and human activity that contrasts sharply with the clean air of the mountains and desert. But underneath the initial assault on the senses, There is something deeply satisfying about being surrounded by so much human activity and commercial energy. The caravan makes its way through the streets toward the merchants' quarter, where accommodations have been arranged and where the serious business of trade will begin. The route takes you past markets and workshops, temples and houses, giving you glimpses of the complex urban life that thrives in this oasis of civilization. The caravanserai where you will stay is a substantial structure built around a central courtyard, with stables on the ground floor and sleeping quarters above. The architecture is designed specifically for the needs of traveling merchants, with secure storage for valuable goods and facilities for the care of animals. The process of unloading and securing your precious cargo is carried out with the same care that has characterized the entire journey. The silk and glassware are moved to locked storage rooms, and arrangements are made for their display and sale in the days ahead. The successful completion of the transport phase fills you with quiet satisfaction. Bahar is led to a stall in the stables, where she will recover from the journey's exertions and enjoy the luxury of regular feeding and professional care. She seems to understand that the long journey is over, settling into her new quarters with evident satisfaction. The first night in the city passes quietly, the exhaustion of many days of travel combining with the security of solid walls and a real bed to produce the deepest sleep you have experienced in weeks. The sounds of the city continue through the night, but they are the comfortable sounds of human activity rather than the wild calls of the wilderness. The morning brings the beginning of the commercial activities that are the ultimate purpose of your journey. The silk and glassware are carefully displayed, and the delicate process of negotiation begins with merchants who have traveled from across the known world to participate in Samarkand's markets. The prices offered are better than you had dared hope, reflecting both the quality of your goods and the skill with which you have preserved them during the long journey. The negotiations are complex, involving not just the immediate sale but arrangements for return cargo that will make the journey back equally profitable. As the days pass, the goods are gradually sold, each transaction representing the successful completion of months of planning and weeks of dangerous travel. The silk finds its way to wealthy buyers who appreciate its quality and rarity, while the Roman glassware attracts collectors willing to pay premium prices for such exotic beauty. The gold and silver coins that accumulate from these sales represent more than mere profit. They are the tangible proof of your success as a merchant, the reward for the risks taken and the hardships endured during the long journey across desert and mountain. The return journey will bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, you are content to rest in the security of the great city, surrounded by the fruits of your successful venture and planning for the adventures that lie ahead. The Silk Road has tested you and found you worthy, and you sleep peacefully in the knowledge that you have earned your place among the merchants who keep the ancient trade routes alive.